niceness of the land is in the sea and sand, is the champion in every citizen. So don't let nothing hold our people down. Cause when we cry.
All right, so welcome back. So we are talking about sport and youth crime prevention now. And we do have Mr. Brian Lewis, Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committee's Secretary General. And he's also the immediate past president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. Mr. Lewis, always good to see you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. And compliments of the season to you, everybody here, and your viewers.
Yeah, Mr. Lewis. I know Mr. Lewis a number of years now, you know. Yeah. Back in the day of radio, I would see Mr. Lewis coming in with Mr. Doyle, so it's always good to see you and speak
business.
with you.
Remember the program was Risky Business?
Yeah, risky business, boy. Sometimes sport is risky business, you know, Mr. Lewis. So let's talk a little bit about sport and youth crime prevention.
Okay, but before that, I think it would be because I think it brought home in a very stark way where we are as a country currently in terms of crime and gang violence and gun violence. So I'd like to extend condolences to the family of Lana Sahadio, the innocent woman whose life was snuffed out yesterday in the ambush that was related to what police says is gang violence. And that kind of should alert people. What I mean, we how many more innocent people must die? How many more deaths we must have before we come out of this sort of where we have normalized crime? You know, it no longer seems to. It almost has become entertainment in terms of social media and the posting of things related to crime. And you know, when you look at where the Trinidad and Tobago is ranked, I mean, all the good things we do in sport and steel pan and calypso and music, the fact is that we are ranked in the top 10 in terms of crime per capita, in terms of intentional homicide. We are ranked again in the top 10, 39.5 homicides per 100,000 people. So we need to have a sense of urgency about it. We need to look at different interventions. It's not I tell people, talking about the use of sport now is not a criticism towards anything that's happening. It is that we need to not just talk about gold medals, which, you know, I'm a big proponent of that, but we also need to look at, and it's not an either or. It's not taking away from one to help the other, but it is the reality of the power of sport in terms of youth crime and prevention and at-risk behaviors and dealing with gang violence. And it's not a Brian Lewis thing or any one person. This is something that is happening globally now in terms of the role that sport could play in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah. But you know, Mr. Lewis, what I have seen over the years is that sport has been a part of our culture for a while. And we have seen where sport is used in a lot of cases to get the young people away, to give them something to occupy their time.
Right.
But sometimes you have some of the young people somewhere along the way, because you would know, because of your experience in sport, there would have been very promising athletes doing well, and all of a sudden they have fallen off the straight and narrow path. So there has to be some way to keep them on the path. How do we do that?
The reality and the truth is that the gang violence that we are seeing, in particular the guns and all of that, is a symptom rather than the root cause. A lot of people focusing on these Afro-Trinbagonian youths who mainly are the ones perpetrating and the victims of the crime, especially when you have innocent people, unfortunate, are themselves victims of a broken system. the root cause that we keep dancing around as a society, but which I wouldn't get into, is the pervasive corruption that is the ultimate betrayal of public trust, white-collar crime. Because these guns that are coming in, ordinary people can't fund it. That being said, the other reality, Marlon, is that in the communities, community-based sports, especially the urban communities, there is no place really for youth and young people to play within their communities. They have to go outside of their communities. And that's where the programs such as SCORE, which is Sport Against Crime Outreach, outreach and using sport, raising awareness to deal with, in particular, crime, youth crime prevention. It's an initiative done, for example, by the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, UNODC, the IOC, and a number of other bodies. There have been successful interventions in countries such as Colombia, yes, Nigeria, Senegal, etc., Mexico. And it is something that we need to elevate, because you can't solve the crime and the gang violence from the top down. It has to happen in the community. So to your question, my response to that would be you've got to get it from the ground up. And even while as TTOC President, in 2017 we had launched an initiative, replace guns with medals. And we had some pilot projects in La Lune, Moruga, for example, with Rudolph Jacques from Rainbow Sport and Cultural Club, who had experience using the intervention of sport, rugby, in the train line.
Yes.
And he ran a pilot project for the TTOC, and it went very well. The challenge is, and always is in these instances, sustainability of the funding.
Yes.
And there are a number of people in communities, Marlon, running sport programs.
Yeah, Mr. Lewis, hold your thoughts. We must go to a very short break. We're coming back.
Mm-hmm.
You could see that as lucky or unlucky, but once you're living here, this is your family. It is before a short time, and when we smile, whoa, it is stretched from mile to
All right, so Mr. Brian Lewis continues to visit with us, and we're speaking about sport and youth crime prevention, to being used as a youth crime prevention tool. But, Mr. Lewis, we admit there is a problem of consistency. What is the problem? Money?
Well, if you talk to most of the people delivering impactful programs,
yes,
whether it is using sport or steel pan, or other things, the challenge is the sustainability of funding or resources to carry it through. It can't be done in a 3-week or a 6-week program. It has to be sustainable, because you also have to deal with the children 5 to 10, because they're still very open and receptive and changeable, while also dealing with because you don't want to appear to be giving up on the older ones who have already been succumbed to the peer pressure and whatever and recruited into the gangs. And that seems to be a problem, because you talk to any of them, even in terms of the funders, the civil society, the corporate, it's very difficult for them to sustain support for these programs over 5, 6, 7
yes,
years, 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because their strategic objective is more, they have to provide accountability. And therein lies the problem. And that's why the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime and programs external to that may provide grant funding needs to be embraced as part of a holistic approach. So it can't only be government.
Right.
It can't only be civil society. It can't only be business. It can't only be the sport organization. Because no one group or individual has the perfect answer. Because it's not a singular approach. There are multiple factors causing this crime epidemic, which, as I said, I want to emphasize is the symptom, the root cause. Until we prepare to deal with the pervasive corruption in our society that we all have normalized and tolerated, we will continue to have challenges dealing with the gangs and the gun violence.
Mr. Lewis, before time runs out on us this morning, let's look at some ways that you can suggest in that we introduce the young people to sport and we somehow are able to keep them in sport.
I think that what we have to figure out is how do we sustain the impactful, effective programs in the communities that we consider at risk. And it can't only be team sports, because you have to figure out how within the communities that you use sport on a sustainable basis to teach life skills, etc. So it will take some conversation, but above all, it will take will and courage to deal with the particular issue of youth crime prevention, gang violence, and at-risk behavior.
Yeah, and consistency, yeah. I know that you all are also celebrating the 10th anniversary of the TTOC Gold Foundation Marathon.
Right, so next year, just to slip in that, next year, the 21st of January 2024, we will be doing the group that has committed since 2015 to do to enter the marathon, to do the marathon walk in support of what used to be called the TTOC Goal 10 goal by 2024 athlete welfare and preparation, from which has now transitioned to a legal foundation called TTOC Gold Foundation. The walk, the 10th anniversary of that walk, from St. Mary's Junction, Freeport, to the Harvard Club on Serpentine Road will take place on the 21st of January 2024, starting at 2 a.m. And that is all. That, as I said, is about raising awareness and funding and support for the athletes and young people now at the other end of the spectrum who aspire specifically to achieve the big goal of Olympic goal, and to be on that Olympic podium. We have to remember that if you set mediocre goals and mediocre expectations, you will get mediocre results. So we have to find a way to encourage on the other end of the spectrum those youth and young people who aspire to be Olympic champions.
You know, Mr. Lewis, my feeling is that we always want the best from our athletes,
right.
But I don't know that the right infrastructure is in place to provide. Take, for instance, in other countries, because we like to compare ourselves to other countries, if someone is involved in football, that's their life.
Correct.
Right? Or football, they're doing everything football, they're doing everything basketball, you name it. In Trinidad and Tobago, it's not a case like that. So you play football in the evening, but you have to go and work in the morning.
And that has to change. But Marlon, you have to remember, it is cultural. This is a country where you take children out of sport to do the SCA exam and CAPE, because sports is still not seen as a legitimate career by most parents. So those things have spillover effect, but that requires a whole different discussion another time.
Mr. Lewis, it's always good to see you and speak with you. Thank you very much for your contribution over the years to sport, and I suspect in other areas. We do appreciate it. And I'm sure that we'll speak to you in the new year.
Thank you very much, and all the best to you, and a bright and prosperous new year.
All right, thank you. We're taking that. We're going to a break. We're coming back.
It is before a short time.